Hi everyone, it's Michael from Landscape, and today I'm going to show you how to create a new property record. A property record in Landscape is a way of tracking an interest that you hold or hope to hold in a piece of land. A property is the most fundamental unit within Landscape and is used to build projects or stewardship sites. So knowing how to create one and how it functions is really vital to using Landscape. To get started, click the plus button on the upper left-hand corner. Change the drop-down to Property and click OK. So the first thing you need to capture is the property name. So just type it in here at the top. If there's more than one name that you refer to the property as, you can enter those under alias and separate the different names by semicolons. So maybe we also call this one Pine Hill Mountain and maybe Pine Hill Farm. And then this is also a good place to put an internal filing number if you use that. So now that we've entered these as different aliases, you'll be able to search by Pine Hill Mountain or Pine Hill Farm, for example, and it will pull up this property record. So next you'll want to track the status, which is this field right here. This field has 5 available options, and unlike most drop-down menus in Landscape, is not customizable. By default, a new property is given the status of active, which is used to denote properties which you are actively acquiring. Inactive can be used if a project has gone dormant, but you want to retain the information within the record rather than deleting it. Current holding is what's used for any interests that you currently hold and will probably be the most used status in Landscape for your organization. Partner holding can be used for a property which you helped acquire but never actually held an interest in or managed. And disposed can be used for if you held an interest at one time but no longer do because you sold the property or transferred it to another organization. Active and inactive have the access to the stage category, which is right here. And by default, it's set to inquiry, but you also have access to negotiation and completed. And this dropdown is customizable via the settings, so you can add stages. And then as you're moving through the process of acquisition, you can change the stages to track that process. Finally, an important field that you want to capture is the interest, which of course denotes the interest that your organization holds or is hoping to hold in the property. So for this property record, I'm going to change the status to current holding, and I'm going to change the interest to easement. And the interest is customizable if you want to be able to track different interests than the ones we give you out of the box. So next we'll begin entering the details pertaining to the property. Team lead and team members can be used to manage edit permissions. Description is where you can fill out a general property description. So we'll just enter a short description here. You can add a started on and acquired on date, and maybe I'll make this yesterday. And I'll change the started on date to maybe we started acquiring this in 2019. Recording information for putting information pertaining to the recording of the easement. So maybe the book and page. Acquired acres for the number of acres acquired. You can track the acquisition method. Categories can be used to help you group the property into customizable lists. For example, if we're tracking the number of working farms that we protected, we can add the working farm category. I'll get rid of this none specified. You can add as many categories as you want to the property. So maybe it is also a public park or natural area. Maybe it has an area that is open to the public on this particular easement. Count towards success is used to count the acreage towards your organization total. Purchase price, appraised value, donated value are all pretty self-explanatory and can be entered here. And finally, external ID can be used to record a filing number, maybe like the one that we put in alias, But be aware that this is not a searchable field, so if you want to be able to search by this filing number, you should enter it in alias. So next we get to parcel details, which is where you record information on the location of the property. Properties can be made up of more than one parcel if necessary, and each parcel can have its own set of contacts down here. But most often, a property is just going to be made up of one parcel. Before I begin entering the details of the parcel though, I want to show you a quick trick to fill in some of the details and at the same time show you how to enter a boundary layer for the property so we can start using this map box over here on the right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom to roughly where the property is. So I'll just pick an area at random here. And I'm going to click on the layer button. So we've got two editable layers up here. There's the property specific layers and then the parcel boundaries. Property specific layers is for capturing areas within the property boundary that you want to define. These are areas, again, defined by the interest. So most often it will probably be building envelopes, or maybe it's protection zones. Some organizations track those. But again, those need to be technically defined within the interest. But the one we want to start with today, and sort of the most important layer for any given property, is this parcel boundary layer. You can see it's an area feature. And Landscape gives you a layer to start working with that is named after the property, so Pine Hill Orchard Boundary. And this is the one we're going to be editing today. So to get started, click on those three dots, click Edit Layer, and the Edit Layer box will appear up here. And from here we can import a feature using that import button. So now we can import a zipped archive of ArcGIS shapefile. So that's going to be a zipped folder containing all of those different files that make up a shapefile. We could also import a KML GPX if we wanted to. And so we would just choose that file here and upload it. But what I'm going to do instead is, I don't have that information yet, but I want to know roughly where this property is so people can know when they open up the record, they can have some context. So I'm just going to draw a rough outline by clicking on the draw button and grab a quick boundary here. Maybe we're interested in this property because it's protecting the area along this brook and the area along that lake. So when I'm done, I'm going to click the thumbs up. And that's it. We just drew our parcel boundary. So I'm going to click the X button, and now I'm going to go back to parcel details, click on the three dots, and click Get Locations from Maps. So what it's going to do now, after I say to replace all empty fields, it's asking me whether I want to replace all fields or fill the empty fields. Since we haven't entered anything, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to say replace all. What it's going to do now is query an ArcGIS Online database to try and fill in as much information as possible. And you can see it filled in the state, the county, the jurisdiction, as well as some congressional district information over here. It also filled in the acreage, which I'll go ahead and, just to be consistent, I'll update that acquired acres field up here. What we can also do is define a project area. So if our organization is tracking our progress in different areas that the organization has defined, we can add this parcel to those areas or that area here. So maybe this is part of the Berkshire Highlands area, and it's a Hilltown priority landscape as well. In addition, we can track the PLSS. We can give directions to the parcel for our staff. We can give an additional narrative description, a legal description. Maybe this is what is given in the deed. I always like to have an address at least for the property, so maybe we'll give this one an address of 123 Russell Road, Montgomery, Mass. We can track the tax ID. Maybe this is the map and parcel or block and lot. Assessed value, and we can also give it a tax exempt until date. So now we've entered some of the key location information for the parcel as well as added it to the map. So now whenever anyone comes to this record, they'll be able to zoom directly to the parcel boundary, which is really, really useful. So the last very important piece of information that we want to capture is active contacts for the property. Active contacts in landscape is how you track not only the landowner, but also the grantor, maybe in the case of an easement, neighbors, land acquisition partners, or anyone else whose relationship with this property needs to be tracked. And that relationship in landscape is handled via the use of tags. So for example, I'm going to add a new contact by clicking on that plus button. I'm going to create a new contact. And up here, the first thing we want to edit is the tag for the property. So again, this is defining that interest. And I want to designate this individual as both the landowner and the grantor of the easement. If we want to, we can add an end date. So maybe this person no longer is affiliated with the property. Maybe they sold it. We could add an end date, and that would designate this contact as an inactive contact. And that would let us filter them out from maybe mailing lists if we want to, but we could still retain the information associated with this record. We could also add some additional property relationship notes. Maybe if this person inherited the property, we could write that note here. So I'm going to enter some important contact details here. So give them a display name, first and last. That's really all we need to get started. If they were part of a LLC or organization, we could enter that here. But that's all I'm going to fill for now. I'm going to use this handy autofill these fields button to fill in these fields on the right. Down below, it's going to show me associated properties that are associated with this landowner, or rather this active contact. And all I want to do right now is make sure that people can contact this person. So I'm just going to add a quick email address for them. But we could also add an address, multiple phone numbers, multiple emails, stuff like that. I'm just going to change the type to home. So that's all we need to do to update the active contact for this particular property. But maybe this particular easement also has a co-holder. So I'm going to add them now. I'm going to say choose existing contact, and I'm going to enter the co-holder. Click OK. It's going to take me to that active contact record. And again, I want to make sure to define the relationship with the tag. So I'm going to remove the landowner tag and add the co-holder tag. And just so you know, this drop-down menu is customizable via the settings, like a lot of the drop-down menus that I'm showing you today. So, but they already have all of their details. You can see that they're associated with a lot of different properties that we hold. I'm going to click back to go back to the record. So now we can start adding communications that are related to this property. So emails, calls, stuff like that. We can start tracking them down here. You can see that Landscape has already added some communications associated with Leafy Greens Land Trust. So what Landscape does is it looks at other property records where Leafy Greens Land Trust is an active contact, and it displays all of those communications down here. It's a handy way of not having to miss important communications with these individuals or organizations. If we want to display just the communications that are associated with the property, we can just click on that filter button. So now if I want to add a new communication, maybe with Linda, maybe we called her to talk about the property, we can just click on new. We can say emailed about property visit. Person is who we contacted. So I'm going to select Linda Jones, and I'm going to change this to email. Maybe if we saved a PDF of the email, or if it was a letter, we can go into that communication by clicking on the details note and upload the document here. Click back to go back to the property record. So other things we can capture are conservation values if we want to. Conservation values are how you can track any important metrics related to the protected values on the property. Maybe it's miles of shoreline protected, or maybe it's acres of farmland protected, you can start gathering that stuff here and then totaling it to track at an organization level those different values. You can track capital funding down here, as well as any notes. An important note, want to make sure not to miss about conservation values, those are actually mappable too, so you can map the specific shoreline if you want to, or you can map the farmland within the easement as well that you've protected. So finally, you probably want to be able to track some of the important documents associated with your interest in the property. And for that, you use property assets. So right up here next to the details, there's the assets tab. So we're going to go over there, click on the plus button to see the list of available assets that you can add. Each asset category has some special fields that will help you record information related to that asset. For instance, if I go into an appraisal record and I want to add a property appraisal, you can see that there are some appraisal specific values in here. We would, of course, want to add a name. And we would probably want to upload the document right here. But for right now, all I want to do is upload the baseline report and easement so that my stewardship staff can maybe have access to those documents when they go out into the field. So to do that, to first add the baseline, I'll click Add, change this to Baseline Report, give it a name. Say that it's completed, and then click on the plus button to upload that document. There's my baseline. So now it's uploaded, we can pull it up at any time. I'm going to click back, and now I want to upload the easement. Easements don't have their own asset type. For that, you want to choose generic property asset. Click OK. You can define the type, however. By default, it's given the recorded document type. You can add to these types if you like, but I want to keep it as recorded document. We'll say Pine Hill Orchard easement. Again, give it a status of completed. We can add a summary if we want. Click plus, upload that easement, and now it's done. So you can see as I'm adding documents within these, they're being displayed over here on the list of documents. So you don't have to drill into, as you're filling out these assets, you don't have to drill into each asset in order to have access to the documents. It is a good reminder, though, that you want to make sure to name those documents something descriptive so you can, if you want to, filter them out here as this list gets longer. So that's it for entering a new property record. But I'm sure you're wondering, what do I do if I want to start tracking things like issues or monitoring visits, leases and contracts, or requests and approvals? And for all of that, you'll want to start using something called a stewardship site. So stewardship sites are how you manage activities on an interest after it's protected. And multiple properties can be managed within one stewardship site, or you can have different parcels within a property, each be its own stewardship site. The flexibility allows you to manage the activities on a property or group of properties in a way that reflects how these properties are often managed. Most of the time, though, there's just one property and one parcel for each stewardship site. So click the Add to Stewardship Site button and click on New Site. And you can see it inherited all of the parcel details. It brought over the active contacts. It's also showing me those communications associated with the property. But there are these tabs here, since now we're on the stewardship site. And if I go there, we can start tracking site visits. We can put management plans. We can track issues, rights and approvals, structures and uses, and leases and contracts. So all of the things that you want to start tracking after the property is protected, after you start doing these activities, tracking these activities are done with this stewardship site, you can see how easy it is to create that stewardship site once the property record is created. So that's it for adding a property record. Just a quick reminder, if you need help on any of these topics, you can always use this help button. For instance, if I need another explainer on how properties, parcels, and stewardship sites work, I can just search parcels, and it's going to bring up this article on that organization. If you click on this button, you'll also be taken directly to the knowledge base, so you can scan different articles there as well. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope it was useful, and thanks for using Landscape.